Bote bandeko balandi ya magazine d'actualité glissant chez vous puisque nous sommes Libakou ya kolanda biso mokolo ya lelo. Nous sommes aujourd'hui jeudi le 24 avril 2025. Bienvenue à ce nouveau numéro Blackwater, Société sécurité américaine, paramilitaire américaine. Les Américains ont donné feu vert à cette société. Ils ont société à mercenariat, des choses comme ça. Ils ont le collaborateur Wagner. Mais un compte, il y a Américain. Ils viennent pour sécuriser le minerai. Tout signé accord. La RDC signe avec Blackwater un accord de 50 millions de dollars par mois. Leur mission officielle est protection des sites miniers, protection des personnalités, RDC, surveillance et contrôle à la sortie des minéraux aux frontières, quantité, qualité, taire toute forme de menace sécuritaire. Les soldats de Blackwater ont déjà embarqué pour la RDC. Leur arrivée est imminente. Sachant qu'aucune armée sérieuse ne débarque avant les unités de renseignement. Donc, les unités de cette armée sont déjà à l'est depuis longtemps. Donc, ils sont déjà à l'est. Voici la déclaration percutante du patron des paramilitaires Blackwater Eric sur les sanguinaires Paul Kagame et ses groupes terroristes et ce qu'on doit faire pour le retour de la paix. Alors, ils ont interviewé Auto Sala, je crois que Nogochango Awa. Je vais le mettre ici. C'était une interview à 21 minutes. Je crois que mon confrère, qui, j'oublie son nom, a checké un lobby, et il avait interprété. Donc, il y a un en anglais, il avait déjà mis ça à interpréter. Je parlais de mon frère Blaise. Blaise avait déjà mis ça et il avait interprété. Alors, il faut suivre religieusement cette interview. Blackwater sont des Américains, finalement, va signer contrat. C'est fini. Obi, oignon, ce sont les cas. Mais RDC est en train de mettre en place le système. Quand on parle de 50 millions, les gens crient, 50 millions, les Kébélés, mais 50 millions, c'est pour notre intérêt. Nous allons perdre par mois combien qu'on perd par mois. C'est ça le problème. On perd combien par mois? Et béni. Donc, quand on a à sécuriser, ils sont là, si c'est pour 6 mois, combien de mois ils sont là. Et puis, le contrat 50 millions, ils ont appuyé dans matériel, drone, nini, l'eau belé, qu'il va amener. Pour l'ailleurs, ce monsieur m'a beaucoup impressionné. Il a commencé à expliquer dans l'interview comment Goma a été pris. Comment les Rwandais ont Goma Ndengeni. Dans l'interview, juste après cette émission, on a interview en anglais. Alors, ça, il faut ramasser. Bon, interprétation d'ango. Alors, moi, je ne parle pas anglais, mais les gens qui, par exemple, pays anglophones, vont comprendre facilement. Mais on a un pays anglophone, bon, moyen, bon, interpréter yango. Donc, je interprétais ça. Non, c'est terrible. Avant la connaissance RDC Makas. Alors, Eric Pence a commencé à solliciter l'administration Trump pour les marchés de la RDC depuis un moment, car pour lui, c'était un contrat de rêve, car c'est son business. Il fallait convaincre l'administration Trump avec les rapports très détaillés de la situation et les rapports corroborent avec celui de l'ONU. Et présenter comment il peut éradiquer les groupes armés et surtout les M23. Donc, il a fait un rapport à Trump sur l'armée rwandaise, sur le mode opératoire armée rwandaise, comment on va opérer la Est, à ça les rapports sur faiblesse et les forces, il y a forces armées, à ça les rapports sur infiltrer l'armée rwandaise, et à ça les rapports sur cahier de charges, il y a Rwanda. Et à proposer la solution à lui, ok, si on a vu marché, voilà comment, parce que les Américains sont en train de signer un accord du siècle avec la RDC minéré contre la sécurité. La sécurité maintenant, mais sur la sécurité, ils allaient Blackwater. Très bien. Très bien. D'abord, les Américains vont exercer la pression sur le Rwanda à retirer la troupe. Et le Blackwater va s'installer. Blackwater, c'est la société à Eric Prince. Hein? Eric Prince. Il a présenté son rapport, comment il peut éradiquer ces groupes armés et surtout les M23. Eric Prince connaît exactement les armes et les drones appartenant au Rwanda et utilisés par les M23. Ces derniers a bel et bien confirmé à Trump que le M23 égale RDF. Et ce rapport a encore mis Kagame à genoux. Il est important de noter avant que Trump donne son aval pour que Black fasse le travail, une session de travail avec la haute hiérarchie de l'armée américaine et intelligence militaire, c'est-à-dire CIA, FBI et les autres, est requise et ces derniers donnent leur accord comme cela fut le cas dans d'autres situations où le Blackwater a intervenu. Blackwater, avec son patron, sont devenus un partenaire de la RDC pour des décennies. Entre États, il n'y a que les intérêts. Les États-Unis et les Blackwater ont trouvé leur intérêt en RDC et la RDC a trouvé leur intérêt chez eux. Alors, posez-vous la question, pourquoi Kagame ne fait pas la sortie pour critiquer ou contredire Eric Prince des décennies des gloires à Kigali sont notre espérance. On a fini. Depuis avant-hier, Eric Prince, vous allez patron, il y a Blackwater, qui vient de signer l'accord déjà avec la RDC, 50 millions, je ne sais pas par mois, par trimestre, bon, je dois vérifier. Mais c'est comme on dit, c'est par mois. Mais je ne crois pas que c'est par mois. Il y a un contrat, moi, sécurisé, place où va minérer Zali, il va sécuriser là-bas. Alors, il y a un mode d'opérateur rwandais, il y a un drone, il y a un nyonso, il y a tout. Mouvement et troupes, il y a un nombre, il y a un RDC, c'est ce qu'il faut faire. Et puis, il y a comment ramener Kimia dans l'Est du Congo. Ok. Trump appelle ces maintenant, on a service à renseignement ainsi que forces armées américaines. Alors, ça avance très bien avec les Américains. Est-ce que vous voyez que les États-Unis ont gagné l'ambassade et belé au niveau Afrique, mais à concentrer dans le Congo. Est-ce que vous voyez bien? Donc, Congolais qui rêvent, mon chiffon ou à lobby, M23, RDC, ils ont gagné le temps. RDC a gagné le temps, le président Aïbilo Azali Kosala. Alors, ce qui est vrai, les États-Unis ont gagné l'ambassade, la plupart à Kangi, ambassade dans le Congo Awa. D'ailleurs, je vais parler ça dans la seconde émission. Sinon, nous parlons très bien dans l'émission Oyo Ezali Koya pour que je ne puisse pas mélanger. Parce que moi, j'aime si on a le monde clair dans le Koan. Alors, maintenant, dans notre interview, il y a Eric Prince. J'ai vu une interview d'ailleurs, du début jusqu'à la fin. Et c'est fini pour le Rwanda. C'est fini. C'est fini.
Hello, everybody. This is Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. There's tremendous violence taking place in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And naturally, we've got our in-house expert on all things Africa and global affairs. Eric, let me read to you this excerpt from a news story about what's happening with the M23 rebellion. To put this into context for our off-leash viewers, the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have recently captured Goma, a key city in North Kivu province, leading to thousands of people, including prisoners, fleeing in desperation. This capture has been described as a critical escalation in the conflict, marking the most significant territorial gain by M23 since 2012. The DRC government has accused Rwanda of supporting the M23, which Rwanda denies, countering that the DRC supports anti-Rwandan militias. This is just top line. All this is going down right now, and there's tremendous humanitarian crisis happening as a result of this. Eric, the Congo is a massive piece of territory on the continent of Africa. It's got a very sordid past and history. Walk us through what's happening right now, and then we'll go back into history as well.
Well, what's happening right now, they say the M23 rebels. The reality is that is a surrogate of the Rwandan military run by Paul Kagame. And it started, look, the Rwandan genocide, of course, happened in 94. And you had part of the Rwandan society, the Hutus, started abusing and a genocide against the Tutsis. And the FDLR, which was that Hutu extremist organization, some of them fled to Eastern DRC. And supposedly the M23 rebels were there to fight against them. But the reality of what it's become is a massive theft organization making about $600 million a month in gold, in cobalt, tin, tantalum, all the high-value minerals coming out of Eastern Congo are taken in areas managed by this M23 gang, supported by Rwandan special forces. Rwanda posts all sorts of high numbers for exports of minerals. None of those minerals are actually produced or mined in Rwanda. They're all stolen from DRC. So in this last go, where they've seized Goma, which is a key city in Eastern DRC, right on the north end of Lake Kivu, there was some Romanian security guys, a PMC, that were holding out, and they held out against about 5 days of attacks from M23. And then finally the Rwandans said, to hell with it, and they invaded with a full mechanized brigade, armored personnel carriers, even tanks, and using armed Turkish TB2 drones to take the city of Goma. So this is not some internal guerrilla spat in Eastern DRC. This is an invasion of a sovereign government into the sovereign territory, taking lots of sovereign territory of the DRC solely over minerals, resources, and the value that Rwanda is looting out of Eastern DRC. There's about 130 various armed gangs, but obviously M23 is the one that is state-sponsored. They also get some help from Uganda, because again, the Ugandan, the UPDF, the Uganda military, is also making huge money off the theft and the trafficking of gold, diamonds, coltan, the thing that makes your cell phone or the battery in your electric vehicle. The top line export from DRC is $37 billion a year in everything from copper to lead to nickel to coltan, cobalt, all the minerals that make the high-end batteries, the NPDR minerals, and of course, diamonds as well. Massive. It's estimated there's $25 trillion of value in the ground in the DRC. And the neighbor, in this case, Rwanda, has gnawed off a chunk and is trying to devour it. And it's funny how some people get up in arms about Russia lopping off a chunk of Ukraine, rightfully. It was Ukrainian sovereign territory. In this case, you have DRC sovereign territory that has been gnawed off, and I would say hacked off by Rwanda by force of arms to perpetuate the theft and stealing of these minerals. And for all the apologists for Rwanda in DC, I have to call bullshit on them, because this is Putin-like behavior in terms of trying to adjust the borders of your country by force of arms.
Really, really fascinating stuff, Eric, because, you talk about this is an invasion from a neighboring country, and it's not getting any attention whatsoever, certainly even in global media, very, very limited attention. And as you say, the eastern portion of the country seems to be very mineral rich. But obviously, the DRC is vulnerable to this sort of invasion. Tell us a little bit about sort of the security apparatus run by the DRC government and the election going back to December of 2023 that got us here.
So the December 2023 election was when President Tshisekedi was reelected. It's a huge country. It has a lot of issues. I mean, driving around the country, a lot of the roads look more like a swamp and very lumpy. And what should take, a few hours to go 200 miles takes 30 days because it's that rugged. So the logistics and the movement of anything in DRC is a challenge. So difficult also for the DRC government to project law and order, combat power, et cetera, to defend all its borders. And because of the massive amount of wealth and the lawlessness and the various gangs, there's 130 different armed gangs that are effectively resource robbing gangs. It's just made for some really bad secondary effects. Something like 80% of the women in Eastern DRC have been raped. Imagine that. Not 8%, 80%.
Wow.
So the criminal lawlessness of if you give completely lawless people the access to more money and more weapons centered around the minerals trade, you get to an even greater level of chaos, and that's what persists in the DRC. So the Congolese military trying to stand up to that is not great. And there's, like with any third world military, there's generals that are there for the take to line their pockets, and there are some that want to fight and do their patriotic duty. And, we have that across the board, even in Western militaries as well. Some generals, some officers are there to fight and get a job done, and there's a lot of bureaucrats. And the DRC has a big mix of the latter right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's stunning. An 80% of women having been raped. The United Nations reports over 7 million people have been internally displaced in the DRC. And that's before the M23 takeover of Goma. So probably even more people have been displaced in the meantime. What a tragedy. And yet the international community is not responding in any way that I can see.
Well, and again, the UN and the UN peacekeeping approach for the last 50, 60 years globally has been a complete farce, and it has devolved into a big circle of corruption, right? So you have UN peacekeepers there from very third world countries with ill-trained, ill-equipped troops, not well paid, but they're issued firearms and ammunition, and they end up selling those firearms and ammunition to some of these 130 different gangs in exchange for gold. Well, if you were to check the footlockers of the so-called peacekeepers that were being sent home, you would find in most cases those footlockers are lined with little gold dory bars. It's just a 1 kilogram bar of field refined gold. That is the reality of how pathetic and corrupt the UN peacekeeping is. I hope that's one of the next things Team Doge goes after, is just gutting the financing. The U.S. finances, I think, 28 to 35% of all UN peacekeeping, and it's an absolute sham.
Wow.
It is what they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and the idea of a UN peacekeeping force, nice idea, horribly executed, and there's hundreds of millions of people suffering unnecessarily because of that level of incompetence and corruption. And so the DRC is in a tough situation right now because their resource area, North and South Kivu, are some of the richest terrain in the world, and it's been invaded and locked off by their well-armed neighbor, including, also the Rwandans were using Israeli-provided spike missiles against sovereign Congolese forces. So it's a big problem, and it'll be interesting to see what the neighbors do about this kind of invasion in the Congo.
Yeah, talk about UN peacekeeping forces. If you see the light blue helmets, run. And
Yes.
And the lack of outrage is incredible. This article says the European Union canceled its observation mission due to logistical issues, and the East African community was also not present to observe due to accreditation problems. Sounds like a lot of bureaucratic cowards to me who are scared to death of entering, this war-torn nation. And that yet people suffer and people die in the process. You know, you've taught us a lot here, Eric, on Off Leash about this great disparity between wealth beneath the ground in some of these African nations, and yet how corruption prevents the proper leveraging of that to the benefit of their own population. Do you think President Tshisekedi has a chance at trying to bring some order to the country and correct this assault from the Rwandans? What does he do from here? What would your recommendation be?
Well, they need to do a lot better job on the PR side of actually raising the alarm that they've been invaded, that a opposing neighbor has gnawed off a chunk of their sovereign territory and taking serious money away from the Congolese people. Two, they need to actually build some capacity to push back and to police their borders. I was 8 years ago, I chartered an airplane and I flew all over Eastern DRC into all these different UN bases because I just wanted to understand what it is they were supposed to be doing versus what they were actually doing. And so landing in all these bases and driving around, I did it over a 6-day period. I can say I've been to every airfield in northern, central, and mostly southeastern DRC, and driven a 30 to 50 kilometer radius around those towns and villages and flown over the whole area at low level. It is rugged terrain. The UN is beyond inept and corrupt, and the Congolese forces are overmatched. And Rwanda, which has been stealing hundreds of millions of dollars of resources, have reinvested into weapon systems and military, which they've plowed in and taken more of their neighbors' terrain. So it's headed in the wrong direction. I don't know that the U.S. isn't going to do something about it, but it does matter to U.S. supply chains, because whether it's copper, cobalt, coltan, all those key minerals that go into making our electronics, electric vehicles, phones, etc., comes from there. And Dodd-Frank, that passed into law, requires a conflict-free supply chain for those minerals. And Rwanda is making it 100% conflict-based supply chain right now. So it's revisit this in 3 months, and we'll see if anything's changed. But
cet homme est déterminé à mettre fin à la batrocité sur ya Rwanda. Que Dieu vous bénisse. À la prochaine. Ciao.